Awesome. I think we'll get started here. Welcome, everyone. Glad you could join us today for our 1 hour webinar. AP automation is now a necessity, getting leadership on board. I'm Sam Maxwell, part of the marketing team here at MHC, and I'll be facilitating today's discussion alongside our speaker, Mindy Kane, who I'll be introducing shortly. First, just wanted to go over some housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded and attendees will receive a follow-up email with the link to the recording on our website. All participants are muted to prevent any background noise, so please type in any questions you may have into the Q&A section. There will also be a post-webinar survey that will appear when the webinar ends. Please use the survey to let us know how we're doing and to request any additional information. That way an MHC source will be able to follow up with you. And we also really appreciate the feedback. Awesome. Next slide, please, Mindy. Awesome. If you just want to click through, we'll have some transitions popping up. Perfect. Great. So for those of you not familiar with MHC, we help organizations tackle digital transformation with speed and confidence using our solutions to automate the capture, transformation, and communication of paper and digital documents across core business processes. Our flexible end-to-end automation platform helps users eliminate tedious procure-to-pay and order-to-cash tasks, increase efficiency, achieve operational excellence goals, and strengthen relationships with customers and vendors. Great, next slide. And so today, our phenomenal speaker is Mindy Kane. Next slide. So just a little bit about Mindy. She is the manager of the accounts payable team at Briggs Industrial Solutions, which is a wholesaler of industrial machinery equipment, warehouse solutions provider, and a material handling company. She has over 20 years of experience in multiple industries as an AP professional. She currently leads a team of 7 people and is passionate about process improvement and is committed to training AP professionals to perform using best practices. Mindy earned her BA in Business Administration from Milligan University. She is also pleased to serve as Vice President of the Texas chapter of the Institute of Finance and Management. She also serves as a member of the IOFM advisory panel and is a certification trainer for IOFM. In this capacity, she provides certification candidates an understanding of best practices and fosters a commitment to accuracy and compliance. So without further ado, Mindy, I'll be passing it over to you.
Thank you very much for that introduction and welcome everyone. I'm excited to be with you today. And as mentioned, I am an accounts payable professional. So my information today is drawn from my experience in that field, as well as my experience in implementing automated solutions. So if you're not an AP professional, please don't let that discourage you. This information can be applied to any area of business seeking to implement an automation tool. So with that said, let's discuss our agenda just a little bit today. We are going to start with the importance of doing your research through mapping your processes. We'll move on to gathering statistics of your current situation and benchmarking those statistics. We'll speak about the importance of reaching out to internal stakeholders and leaders. And finally, how to take all the information you've gathered to build a solid presentation to pitch your idea to leaders. Our sponsors today will share some information on MHC North Star, which is an AP automation tool, and then we'll go open up the conversation for any questions you may have. So please feel free to submit your questions anytime during the webinar, and we will address those at the end of the hour. So, many people think automation is something new. It's actually been around since the 90s. And in the last decade, we're seeing a real shift in the number of companies who recognize the need for it. And I believe COVID really added to that conversation. All of us were in a position to find creative ways to continue our work without touching paper, literally overnight. Some of us were more prepared than others, and some of us had to really scramble to ensure invoices were paid during this time. Automation solved a lot of those problems. Not only does it save time and money, it improves accuracy and prevents fraud. But how do we convince our leaders that automation is necessary when they don't fully understand our processes and compliance? How do we help our leaders understand that automation doesn't mean we get to lay off the entire team? We're the frontline workers. There's no one better to demonstrate the value that automation will bring to our company and how that automation will benefit the bottom line without laying off employees. So this leads us to our first question for all of you. Have you ever had an executive respond to the idea of automation with, how many employees can we let go once implemented? Go ahead and respond to that in your chat. Okay, it looks like we've got quite a lot of yeses. This is a common thing that people hear. I've heard this too. It's a challenging belief to overcome with your leadership to get them to buy into automation, which we know in the front lines is desperately needed because we spend so much time and energy dedicating people to doing remedial tasks and repetitive tasks that could just be done automatically. So from an AP perspective, we don't turn a profit in what we do. We need the people on our teams to manage the processes that automation cannot address. All the exceptions that require somebody to actually think through that a computer can't necessarily be programmed to do on our behalf. And let's face it, we all know how hard it is to get back an FTE or full-time employee once we give one up. So the last thing we want to do at the beginning of an automation implementation is commit to saying, yeah, sure, you can let half my team go. Because we don't know what it looks like to actually be able to do the value-added services and processes that we rarely get to on a daily basis because we spend so much of our time doing the repetitive things. All right. Mapping your process. This is one of the most important things that I think you can do before you even think about finding a company that you are going to solicit their information for automation. And I will tell you that it's very important for you to interview multiple companies. Narrow it down to a couple that you find really suit your needs and have the tools available for you that you can use. But before you even get to that process, some of the number one things they're going to ask you is, how do invoices actually route through your company? What does that look like? And mapping your process will not only help you answer those questions, it's going to help you know exactly what happens to an invoice from the time it comes into your department until the payment of that invoice comes out of your bank account. This includes processes such as adding new vendors to the system and year-end or tax compliance. Don't just leave it to the invoice process. Address absolutely everything that AP touches. And you want to map it from start to finish so that you can identify what's going on in your department. The best way to map a process is to give each of your team members a different colored sticky notepad. Make a fun afternoon of each of them writing their responsibilities on a note and placing it on a wall or a whiteboard in the order of what happens to that invoice or that process. Once you're complete, transfer that entire process onto a process mapping program such as Microsoft Visio or whatever your company may provide for you so that you can see a picture like you see on the screen of exactly what happens from start to finish. Not only will this engage your team members in the implementation of a new automation tool, it'll be key in demonstrating what your team does to both leaders and other internal and external stakeholders that you need to educate about what you do. So this is going to be something that you're going to be able to use with the potential automation experts who are providing the solution that you're looking for, as well as I think the most key thing that you need to do here is 9 times out of 10, your leaders are not aware of exactly what goes on in your department all day, every day. From my perspective and my experience, leaders think we just pay bills. That's about all that happens there. And we hear about it when something doesn't get paid timely. And that is something that we need to make sure that we are mapping so that this is going to go a long way to helping us help them understand everything that goes into what we're doing. It is not only going to do that, but it's also going to give you a perspective of the areas in your processes that pose the strongest need for improvement. So you're going to be able to see the bottlenecks and the repetitive tasks that automation can provide a solution for. You're going to be able to see all the ways people are touching something that they maybe don't have to anymore. Next, your key performance indicators. Now, measuring the current performance of your team may be one of the most important areas of research you perform. Identifying your key performance indicators can be an ugly thing to some of us because they can be overused and even ineffective in their use at times. However, the purpose of educating our leaders on the necessity of automation and KPIs will provide the data needed to present that case. This is going to help you identify where the company is potentially losing money because of all the time and energy it's spending on things that could be done much quicker and more efficiently through automation. So this kind of brings us into our next poll question. Do you know your cost to process an invoice? All right, I got quite a lot of response there fairly quickly. And surprisingly, not surprisingly, actually, many of you are unaware of how to do that. And that's okay. You're going to learn today. So it's going to be exciting to figure this out. The cost to process an invoice will go a long way to showing leadership where AP is currently wasting money that can be better spent on automation that will allow AP to be far more productive. And for a department that is not automated, the cost to process an invoice can be as high as $30 per invoice. The value can go down to $3 or less with automation. So how do you calculate your cost to process an invoice? You take the total cost to operate as an AP department and divide that by the total number of invoices processed. Now, some of the costs you want to consider in defining the total cost of AP are things like the total salaries of all of the employees in accounts payable. But you want to go a step further than just the salaries, and you want to add the benefits markup that your company pays to provide benefits for your team. And the average benefits markup is between 30 and 40%, depending on your company and the benefits provided. So you would take your total salaries and add another 30 to 40% to that to get a true number of the cost to your company. And you could probably reach out to your HR department to find out what a true markup is for your company and get an exact percentage to mark up. Some additional things are things like your paper check stock, envelopes, postage, printer ink, maker ink if you have a specific printer that's dedicated just to printing checks because of Micker ink. How much does it cost to maintain that printer? Cost per ACH, wire, any additional payment costs, and any automated tools that you may already have. You know, we don't often consider it being a major automation, but we have sometimes other tools that benefit us for 1099 processing at year end that we may actually pay an annual fee for. Include all of those costs into this. And on some things, you can get really granular on the cost to operate AP. You could go so far as calculating the square footage the AP team takes up on the floor and the portion of rent that costs the company. That's a little extreme. It depends on how serious you want to get about the dollars, but that all factors into the total cost to be an AP department. Then you're going to divide that by your total invoices. And that's going to arrive you at how much is it costing you today to process an invoice. And you can see on the picture on the screen here, the number of invoices processed per day per AP staff, or the cost to process a single invoice. In this particular case, an industry benchmark is $10.08. And it goes down 6 times with automation because you can process so many more invoices in so much less time that it absolutely improves everything that you do. Now, some other KPIs you want to be sure to gather, and they're definitely going to come in handy with your automation and your conversations with any companies providing that solution, are going to be things like, how many invoices do you process in a year, a month, a week, a day? How many of those invoices are POs and how many are non-POs? How many invoices are each of your team members processing daily? And I want to caution you, when you come down to these numbers, you might see some large gaps in the individual numbers where one employee may have super high volume of processing and another maybe not so much. And this is where you're going to refer back to your mapping processes, because not everybody on the team is just strictly processing invoices every single day. Some people are doing other tasks that take much more time. And some folks on your team are obviously processing invoices that might be more problem children and take longer to process than just the quick, this one was in, everything matched, and I can move on. Take all of those things into consideration as you are pulling these numbers. You want to be conscious of anything that you're currently paying or receiving EDI. Obviously, you want to include those in the total numbers of invoices that you're processing. But when it comes down to the human capital that you're using, who's touching what, you want to separate out the numbers from what physically gets touched by an individual and what is actually being automatically fed into your system, where you're only required to manage the exceptions. What is the percentage of errors that you find? How many duplicates do you have in a year? Erroneous payments. Quantify the time that it takes for you to correct these things. All of this goes to automation, removes a lot of that inaccuracy. It flags those duplicates. It captures things in a manner that removes that human error element from what we're trying to do. So it's very important for you to have a foundation of understanding of what's actually happening right now. And all of this is going to go to helping you help your leaders further understand what is most needed for your department and how automation is going to benefit that. Another common KPI is days payable outstanding, or DPO. Days payable outstanding is a financial ratio that indicates the average time in days that a company takes to pay its invoices to its vendors. The ratio is typically calculated on a quarterly or annual basis, and it indicates how well the company's cash outflows are being managed. This is going to be an important way to demonstrate to your leaders the difference between what your DPO will look like before automation and what it will look like after. So a company with a higher value of DPO takes longer to pay its bills, which means that it can retain available funds for a longer duration, allowing the company an opportunity to use those funds in a better way to maximize the benefits. A high DPO, however, may also be a red flag indicating an inability for the company to pay its bills on time. And this is where it benefits you, because the amount of time that it takes to process an invoice when you are physically having to touch it every single day is by far going to be longer than it is to actually have something automatically feed into your system and only address the exceptions. So this is an important factor in improving the benefits of automation, which will greatly impact the time it takes to process an invoice. DPO is calculated by taking the average or ending accounts payable balance and divide by its cost of goods sold, then multiply that figure by 90 for quarterly numbers or 365 for annual. Now, cost of goods sold is calculated by taking your beginning inventory plus purchases minus ending inventory. And this is a valuable KPI that you can use to help you sell the reason that you need to automate processes to your leaders. Your company may have specific KPIs that they already require. Use these numbers to identify how automation will improve them. These KPIs are also likely to be questions the company providing the automation tool will ask you to identify your needs. So you can see in this diagram the difference between average companies and top performing companies, which are going to be companies that are highly automated versus standard companies, which are probably primarily manual processes. And this is how you're going to benchmark your data. You're going to identify those top performing companies who are automated, and you can probably even get some of these statistics from your potential automation solutions. They have these numbers. They work with people who they know where they started, and they track where they end up after implementation of automation. They're going to be able to help you get those numbers and see exactly where you stand. Compare your statistics to the statistics of companies who are automated to further demonstrate the value of adding these tools. This is going to go a long way to helping your leaders agree that this is a change that needs to happen. You want to reach out to internal stakeholders. This is a really important one. Once you have your research in order, speak to someone in IT who can help you understand what you should be looking for in a new automation tool. What type of tool will work with existing systems and resources at your company? Ask your IT contact what their experience has been getting buy-in from executives on new automation resources. Ask how much time IT will need to contribute to a project of this size and what those internal costs may look like. This is going to be a really important question that your leaders are going to want to know the answer to. How long is this going to take? And how many people am I going to have to put on this project that will impact other projects that may already be in place? Seek out a person who has participated in a major company project to get advice on what your next step should be. Sit with a company project planner to ask some of the similar questions you asked your IT contact. What kinds of things should you be on the lookout for? Ask them what has been their biggest challenge in working on projects at your company. Find out from them what they would do differently if they had the opportunity to do a project over again where they found that they were challenged the most. Reach out to other areas of your business that will be impacted by a significant change in AP to get their perspective. Procurement, accounts receivable, sales coordinators, etc. They may have processes in place that will be affected by this change. And most importantly, they may have knowledge of other projects or changes that will benefit what you're trying to do. Be sure to approach these conversations from a perspective of gathering information. You're not in a position to sell automation yet. You're gathering information to present to your leaders to get buy-in from the top. If you don't have buy-in from the top, this won't be a successful venture. Remember, AP processes impact every area of the business. It's important to include everyone you can think of in the conversation to ensure important considerations are not missed. Not one person can possibly think of every area necessary for a successful implementation, which leads us to our next poll question. Have you ever been left out of an implementation process only to discover that it doesn't meet your needs? Wow, that's like a resounding yes. There is well over half of you have experienced this. And I think even if we weren't present in a certain company when it happened, when we arrive at the company and we realize the shortcomings, it's a challenge even then. And this is why it's so important for you to reach out to people, have conversations with people, say, if I did this, what would that look like for you? Collaborate with your team members. Don't think that you're the only one that knows what's needed. And if it gets done the way you think it should, it'll work for everybody. And I think, if we're being honest with each other, this happens more often than it should. People get left out of the conversation, and then you end up having to customize a brand new automated tool to work around all the missed processes that went into place. And this is a really big issue because the whole idea of automation is standardization. Because the more standard something is, the more flexible it is. And the more you customize something, it prevents new systems from updating and improving properly, especially cloud-based systems. And if you go through this process and you flip the switch on a brand new automation tool that's cloud-based, you've just now created a whole new process for everybody where you have to regularly test whether or not something broke every time an update happens. And some of you may feel that pain because you know what that's like. And it's not something we have time to do all day, every day, but it definitely impacts what we do when a report we've always gotten in the past no longer is available, or more importantly, something that was on that report that was key information that we used on a regular basis is no longer on that report. And it's simply because an update was made and it fell off. These are the kinds of things that you need to take into consideration. And you want to make sure that you are planning for these things and trying to cover all your bases. I mean, I think it goes without saying, you're obviously not going to have a perfect process. There's no such thing as a perfect implementation. You're always going to have bugs to work out once the switch is flipped, but you can be as prepared as possible for that and have included as many people as you possibly can in the conversation to ensure that you have what it takes to move forward with the best tool possible. Next, you really want to make it a priority to talk to your executives. And I'm not talking about a formal meeting here where you sit down and you say, I need automation and can I do that? You're not there yet. This is going to be a preliminary conversation similar to speaking to your other colleagues in IT and project management and those different areas to kind of get a feel for what your leadership is putting the most emphasis on this year. What's their initiative? What is their plan? They have a lot going on that you may not be aware of. How do you find that out so that you can plan your presentation in a manner that speaks to the very things that are concerning them? So remember, this is you gathering information, not selling automation. Ask your executives how they feel about automation. Ask what their biggest concerns in the project like this would be. And pay attention to their concerns. Listen to understand why they may be resistant to new tools. How your executives and leaders respond will tell you where you need to focus. Are they concerned about cost? Are they concerned about the time and resources it'll take to add this new tool? Are your leaders just content with how things have always been done? They may be under the impression your processes are working well. You need to use your research and data to demonstrate the areas that need improvement and how this new automation tool will solve that problem. Return on investment is going to go a long way for you demonstrating to your leaders how they're going to recoup the costs of automation. So return on investment equals your net profit divided by the cost of the investment times 100. And this is where your research comes in really handy. Your leaders want to see how this new cost will be offset by savings. And while adding automation costs money and does not necessarily turn a profit, the use of the time of human capital on value-added tasks that are currently missed or delayed is where you can demonstrate the return on this investment. Use the ability to save money and recoup costs to demonstrate the value automation will bring. Use statistics that demonstrate how automation will improve your cost to process an invoice. Quantify how automation will save money in the long run. How much money will you save by claiming discounts you were not able to claim previously because you couldn't get the invoices processed fast enough? How much will you save the company by catching duplicates or identifying errors you were not able to identify previously? Freeing up people to solve challenges that an automated system cannot solve is where the value of this research comes in. Automating the repetitive tasks that bog down the efficiency of the team is where the company will see real savings in areas such as government compliance, penalties and fees, timely deadlines, access to greater metrics, ability to process larger quantities of invoices and payments, greater visibility into areas that are not operating efficiently, and the time for individuals to solve those problems. And as your company grows, automation tools accommodate that growth without adding new staff. That would be a necessary process. If you are paper-based and you continue to grow, you can't possibly get it all done. You need to add more people. In automation, it accommodates that volume. And you're able to handle and manage the exceptions. And at the same time, then, you're also able to make sure that you are not missing important things like reconciling statements. What invoices have you not received? What areas have you been putting off to the side, like managing your vendor maintenance? When was the last time you were able to spend the time to scrub that, ensure all vendors are entered properly, and that there are no outstanding vendors that aren't being used, that haven't been inactivated? You know, ensuring that you are prepared for 1099 compliance for year end. Everything is in place. So you're just running a report and sending a file off because you know your data is accurate. All of this goes to important areas that you need to address before you implement automation. You want to be sure that you are putting accurate data into a new system. You want to make sure that you are not doing an old adage that was coined by a gentleman at IBM many years ago: garbage in, garbage out. If you put garbage into an automated system, it is going to amplify the areas that are broken in your entire area of processing. And your mapping of your process is going to show you those areas that you need to shore up before you touch automation, so that what you're transferring when you turn that automation on is actually going to benefit you. And finally, you're going to be in a position now to present your idea to your leaders. And this is a really important part. This is where you are taking everything that you have learned. This is where you are compiling all of those statistics, all of those details, all of those conversations, and everything that you have found from your colleagues, and putting it together in such a way that you are, one, defining with your leaders exactly where you're sitting right now and what is happening in your department today. You are also demonstrating to them that you've done your homework. You've talked to people who would be key participants in ensuring that automation is turned on, from your IT folks to potential project managers, depending on the size of your company and just how robust those areas are. They're going to know that you spoke to them, because your presentation is going to be specifically geared toward their concerns. If cost was their concern, spend a lot of time demonstrating to them that through your research, what you are costing the company today, because you are so highly manually processed, and what you are going to be saving the company through automation. Demonstrate those statistics. Show them what can happen. Show them how you're going to recoup those costs, not just in 1 year, but in all the years to come. And how you're going to be able to redirect current staff members to participate in areas that are going to just further make everything better in your department. Areas like we discussed, ensuring that projects are done in AP where there isn't any large vendors outstanding that aren't up to date and have outstanding invoices or past due invoices. They're going to be able to do analysis on late fees and discount opportunities. They're going to be able to do analysis on the vendor master on a regular basis and ensure that's being done properly. The things that get pushed through quickly because they have to be reviewed, but there isn't always time to do it. Those are the areas where you're going to be able to apply your staff that is going to further benefit your company and find new ways to potentially leverage the automation tool that you have implemented as well as ways to save the company money. These are all really important parts. And then pitch your idea to your leaders and see what the opportunity is for them and for you. I think it will go a very long way for you to have them see exactly how hard you've worked to put together your data. And it will be eye-opening to them to see you do a whole lot more than just pay bills in accounts payable. And automation is the solution that we can't deny moving forward. I think we all need it desperately, just to remove the opportunity for human error. So I finished a little bit early here, folks, but I know we have some more things to talk about. And then I also want to open this up for questions. But I thank you for your time, and I hope that this was valuable information to you. I'm going to move on to the next poll question for each of you. Do you have an active or upcoming AP initiative? Right, this is great. I'm going to turn it back over to you folks at MHC to discuss that poll and your next slide here.
Great. Thank you a ton, Mindy. That was a phenomenal presentation, so can't thank you enough. All right, folks, right before we hop into our Q&A session, just wanted to introduce you guys to MHC North Star, just where MHC can help out in this process. So MHC North Star can help by empowering your team to take ownership of your processes, your documents, and your communications with the simplicity of self-service. We help streamline your AP payment process with an automated accounts payable solution configured to your specific business needs. And finally, we maintain compliance, reduce your AP team's workload to ensure that payments are made accurately and on time. Again, thank you, Mindy. And yeah, we can jump into the Q&A now. Let me just pull up some of our questions. I believe you can hop to the next slide as well. Great. So one question we have here is, where can I find benchmarking statistics to compare my metrics to?
That's a really good question. And there's a lot of opportunities for that. One in particular is the companies that you're seeking an automation solution for. They are definitely going to have statistics like this for the people that they have previously done work with who have implemented their tool. In addition to that, something close to my heart is IOFM, the Institute of Finance Management, and they have extensive resources on this. They actually do benchmarking surveys with all their members every single year, and they publish that out to all their members. So you can see exactly where you're sitting in the entire industry of accounts payable. You're able to identify who's doing things well and who's not doing things great. And it really is great for tracking trends.
Awesome. Great. Another question rolled in here. What if your company doesn't have a large IT department experienced in adding these tools?
That's a really tricky one too. And you're going to have a bigger challenge, I believe, selling your leadership on automation when you don't have a robust IT team. Because obviously you're going to need IT to ensure things are implemented well. This is where your research is really going to come in handy to win your leaders over, because even if you have a small IT team that maybe their first response is going to be, I don't have time, I can't do this. If you get your buy-in from leadership by demonstrating to them how this automation is going to actually benefit and save the company money, they're going to be able to get your IT folks to work with you on what's needed. And in addition to that, I will add cloud-based automation is fairly simple compared to years back when things had to be, literally programs had to be tied together and a whole, I'm not an IT expert, so I'm not going to go into detail on that, but the folks on the call who represent MHC are probably going, yeah, it's not as hard as it sounds as far as an IT perspective is concerned, but you do need to include your IT folks so that you understand where they're coming from and how to implement that into your presentation to leaders.
Great. And question number 3 here, I believe this is the last one we have for today. What if your leaders do not think automation is necessary?
This is going to probably be the biggest challenge you have to overcome. And you're going to do that by demonstrating to them what you do. And I can tell you from personal experience, when you start putting statistics up on a board of the numbers and the costs of things and all the things that we talked about in mapping your process and, go so far as to add to your current mapped process, what that mapped process will look like if you have automation and how much of that will go away. So they have a visual. You want to present to people an idea of here's where we are, but here's where we can be. And yes, it may cost this much money, but here's where we're saving that we can't even address today because we don't have the manpower.
Great. Well, appreciate you answering those questions, Mindy. If you wouldn't mind clicking to the next slide as we wrap up here. Looks like we're going to be giving everyone back a little bit of time. But
Yes.
just want to thank everyone again today for attending. And thank you again, Mindy. This was a phenomenal presentation. So thank you a ton. If you're interested in learning more about what's going on over at MHC, please register for our monthly newsletter. That way you'll receive reminders about upcoming webinars and interesting thought leadership content. A link will also be included with our follow-up email, so be sure to register today. Thanks again, Mindy, and thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks, everyone.